Hey guys, it's Roderick, and I'm back to talk about You Season 4, Part 1, spoilers, the complete coverage. So, clearly, my whole thought process was I want to give you like a little spoiler, a little yang, just for you all just to like get the taste for you all to watch it so that then when I do the video with the spoilers, that everyone could be ready and on the same page. Clearly that was not the case because folks were like, is that it? Is that whatever? So let's just sit down and give us a good key about You Season 4 Part 1. If you're new to this channel, welcome. This is where we talk about films, movies, a little bit of reality TV, but always with the key and with an eye towards screenwriting, acting, and directing. So let's get to it, right? So, I was kind of late to the You party in the beginning, right? So after everyone had like hyped it up, I watched season 1 and I was like, but I did like Penn Badgley because I am a Gossip Girl fan, right? So, season 1 with Beck, I was like, okay, because Beck just annoyed me anyway, right? So then we get to season 2, and I was like, okay, you've been pining away, you're upset about Beck, oh my God, whatever, you find love, everything seems to be great, we go and find love, even though you've like low-key killed her like twin brother, all of a sudden, season 3, love's not good enough anymore, so I went into like season 4 being like, Joe is a whole ass fuckboy, right? Because all he did was complain about not finding love, looking for someone who understood him, looking for somebody who like could really understand him and accept him. He finds someone, and then all of a sudden now, just because Beck has the same tendencies as you, she's not good enough anymore. She was crazy when you met her. You are crazy too. How are you totally throwing boulders from your whole ass glass chateau? I was like, I was done. So we start off season 4. So when season 3 ends, Joe is left, right? He's giving a poor little Henry to the little gay couple, and he's off to Paris, sans 2 toes, to chase after Marianne, his new love interest, right? So when we start the show in season 4, for this first part, we see that Joe's like, at some school being a whole ass professor. I go, is that just not the like quintessential essence of white privilege? Like you can literally be a two-toeless serial killer and you could get you a job given lonely boy realness all the way back in London. I was like, whatever. So Joe's here, and meanwhile, I'm like, Lord Joe, like, I don't know why you thought you working at a university with all these people with your serial killing ass would be like a great fucking idea, right? So anyway, he's a professor, they're talking about the books, blah, 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 blah. So we see that one of his colleagues is this guy named Malcolm, who's like kind of douchey. I didn't think Malcolm was all that douchey, but I was like, okay, whatever. But we know that Joe's a classist, right? So, because that was part of the problems he had when he was like married to Love was the fact that she came from money and he didn't. And, I just have no kind of like tolerance for classists really. Because if you watch my reviews for White Lotus and you heard me talk about the Aubrey Plaza character in White Lotus, I just feel like even if you are a classist and when you come in contact with people who are of a higher socioeconomic status than you, there's a way in which you can maneuver and still be congenial and still be polite and personal without just always like reeking that you're just a beleaguered proletariat, right? I don't know, maybe it's just me. Anywho, so we talked to Malcolm, we see it. Now, Jonah found himself a whole ass apartment thanks to Malcolm, who's from this other visiting professor, and Joe's apartment overlooks Malcolm and his girlfriend's apartment. So, that's the last motherfucking thing Joe needs. I don't know why he just didn't decide to leave the storage unit or some shit. Because this motherfucker doesn't need no windows, right? Because immediately the first thing Joe starts to do is he's creeping and he's looking at like Kate through the windows and watching her flick the bean and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, like really though? Like, really? So anyway, so Joe's there. So then we see Joe is like walking one night and he's trying to keep a low cover because he didn't know, burnt up his wife, giving away his baby, and he sans 2 toes. So he's trying to keep a low cover, but he's getting drawn into this Kate person we see from like across the window. So one night Joe's coming home and we see this woman who's about to be mugged and it's Kate, and then Joe goes and tries to stop her, and then he's like, oh, sorry. And immediately Kate is just kind of like, just really bitchy or whatever like that, right? So then Joe's like, ooh, don't tell nobody because, my work visa's kind of on the whatever, right? And he's like, fine. Anyway, Malcolm's like, oh my God. Sorry, there's something in my eye. Malcolm's like, oh my God, okay, I'm going to take you out thank you for saving like me and Kate. So him and Kate decided to take them out to Sundry House, which is kind of like the Soho House, but newer, like one of those private exclusive clubs or whatever like that, right? So this is where we get to see our cast of characters, right? God, this is in my eye, sorry. So we get to Soho House and we meet Lady Sophie, we meet Rold, we meet Blessing, who's like the perfunctory black person with money who's from tech. And Joe kind of goes through his classist way of like finding out, because Joe has already stalked all these people, mind you, in between some time of him arriving, because that's just how Joe moves, right? So he's going to be Stalkerton the entire time. So Malcolm's like, oh, let me go get you. Malcolm goes off to go get some party treats, some party favors, and Joe's stuck talking to all these people. Oh, you got the Asian brother and sister, where the Asian guy's a dick, and and the sister's just like really chilly, and they're just not very welcome and friendly, except for Sophie, right? Sophie's just like, hey, you friend, whatever. So then we see Kate. Kate shows up, is like, what are you, it's just really like, how are you ingratiating yourself into this circle? What's going on? And it's just like very, very bitchy. And I was just like, girl, like, Kate would have had a guy cursed out immediately the first time she came with me with a greasy ass mouth, right? So me and Kate probably would not have been on her good footing, because I would have laid her out the first time she fucking showed up with her greasy ass mouth, right? So anyway, they're they're hanging out, they're doing whatever, and then all of a sudden they start doing shots, like shots. And he's doing absinthe. If you've never had absinthe before, I mean, real absinthe, it is fantastic. If you're ever in New Orleans, go to the Absinthe House. It is definitely a life-changing experience. So I immediately knew when they started doing those shots of absinthe that Joe was about to be on one, right? So he's about to be all up in his cups. So he's doing on the absinthe, and then he's like listening and talking, and he's just getting drunker and drunker and drunker. Then he meets the next person into this group is this guy named Reese, whose book one of his students had given him earlier in the day, and saying, oh, he may or may not run for mayor. And Reese is kind of a little different from the rest of the people. Like everybody else is like very much that Nepo baby, kind of like from that reality show Billionaires Kids and all that type of stuff, right? But Reese seems to have like a little bit more substance to him, right? So I was like, Lord, maybe is he going to end up killing Reese? But they end up really like hitting it off, talking. Joe's getting drunker and drunker. Malcolm comes back with the blow. He's like, oh, yay, thanks. Throws it in the plant. I was like, you at least could have pawned it off to somebody or got you some money or whatever, Joe, since you dressing like a homeless person. You could have turned that little dime bag or 1/16 or 8-ball or whatever he gave you into at least a good little shirt or a pair of shoes or something, since you walk around giving us like lonely boy realness. Anyway, they do that. They get super drunk. Then the scene, so it cuts, and then Joe wakes up, right? And he's like on his couch. He's like, oh, that hungover feeling. Joe wakes up, and Malcolm is dead on his kitchen table with a knife through his heart. I was like, Joe, we done flipped out. All it took for you was some little shots of absinthe, and then that's all it took for you just to go back to our murdering ways? Like, I was like, here we go, right? But then he doesn't remember killing him, right? Because he was so drunk. And I'm like, interesting. So then he got to go back to his, low skill ways, rolling up Malcolm. But then he realizes Malcolm is missing a finger because he had this emerald ring on. He can't find the finger, which is the most hilarious thing ever if you think about it, right? Is like, and this is one of the things I really like about this show, which is kind of bad and good, is that they take this social commentary of Joe being this serial killer and making him very likable, right? Even though he's out here murdering people and he's running around looking for some dead person's finger, like I'd be rolling around my house looking for my keys, right? So I was just like, I kind of chuckled at that. Anyway, Joe rolls him up, whatever. He can't find the finger. Whatever. So he's all freaked. And Malcolm's phone is smashed, so he can't send out a text message and be like, do his little, I decided to leave, whatever, right? So now Joe's like, okay, what's going on? Mind you, he's already kind of like killed these people, whatever. He's somehow like ingratiating the group. Malcolm's missing, and he's like hanging out with these people. Him and Sophie's like adopted him, right? And Sophie, like, she's kind of like the nicer Regina George of the group, right? Like, she's not like, if you took, like, Kate got all of Regina George's bitchiness, and then, you know, Phoebe got all of the niceness of like Katie Heron, right? So you literally use like Mean Girls but British style, right? Which is what kind of like Joe says at one point, because they just really do the most. And I would have had to like get them in order and get them in formation very quickly after they kind of low-key keep trying to diss him and talk about him all the time. Because Joe goes to dinner, right, at one of their houses, and and he's like low-key like pining after Kate, and Phoebe has this bodyguard. If you remember, the bodyguard is the guy who played Alfred in the Gotham series, and he's been in a couple other things. Oh, and he was the guy in Glass Onion. You know, he was the butler in that shitty Invitation movie on Netflix. That's where else he was. He wasn't in the, yeah, that's where he was. So Gotham, check. Butler, you know, The Invitation. You already heard my thoughts about The Invitation. Anywho, so he's like their low-key bodyguard who's like lurking in the back. So he's at dinner and whatever like that. And so now, in between this dinner, he's gotten an invitation to this app called Evanescence or something like that. And somebody is sending him messages. And the fact is, Joe now realizes that somebody is setting him up or has killed Malcolm and is trying to make Joe look like Joe did it. And Joe does not know who it is, right? So after our first episode, it really sets us off with a murder mystery kind of tease, which I really, really enjoyed, because I was like, if this is gonna be another season about Joe pining after some wispy white woman and then he ended up killing everybody, I just was not gonna be into it. But I really, 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 really liked the whole murder mystery concept, right? So now we're like, our second episode. Now remember, typically I say like about usually the first or the third episode is typically when series will do a flashback to kind of tie in or give us some exposition. So you give us our flashbacks in our second episode, right? Because we see Joe showing up in Paris. Because remember when we left him at the end of season 3, he was in Paris. So we're like, how the fuck did he end up in London? Well, he's in Paris, hobbling around, chasing after Marianne, who got her hair done and with braids and all this other stuff in Paris. And then he sees her at the market, takes off his hat, and she's like, I don't know why Joe thought that would be the better option, right? Just to be like, surprise, I stalked you all the way from California to Paris. I don't know why Joe thought that. Like, I was watching this with my best friend and we were just complaining, like, why are you just so always acting like a low rent Dexter, right? Like, I was like, Joe, like some of his decisions just don't really make any sense. And I think it's chalked up to the fact that he's just this hopeless romantic, but he just really, these decisions just don't really make sense sometimes. So Marianne starts to run like any regular black person would. So he chases her up to this abandoned building, and then she like just trying to hide, and he comes down, and then she pulls out a knife as like, you know, because he's like, I just want to talk. And she's like, yeah, I got this knife and whatever. And then clearly, I'm like, girl, if he'd have fucking killed all these people you knew, killed his wife, your little knife trick or whatever, unless you give me Vivica Fox from Kill Bill, your knife work ain't gonna really work with Joe, right? So it's clearly it did not, because he clearly disarmed her very quickly. So then she really starts to be like, I thought she was just gonna get down on her knees and start calling for the Holy Ghost and start praying, because she was just like, no, my daughter's expecting me. Please don't want to kill me. He's like, why would I want to kill you? Because you done killed everybody else, Joe. Until then, you know, we hear Joe's rationalization, right? Like, love poisoned her against me, all this type of stuff, right? So then I guess so then we get another cut, right? So then we come back to the present, and then, you know, Joe's like stalking and looking over, and then we get looking at Kate through her fucking windows, doing all this ish. So then we get another flashback, right? So Joe's sitting in London, minding his whole ass business, no hat, hasn't cut his hair, hasn't dyed his hair, just grew a beard. And I guess you could be an incognito white person in Europe. You know, I guess if I was going to run away to a country, I would probably not go to a European country because I would stick out. But I guess Joe just thought that he could just wander around Europe all the time, because clearly Love's parents have now sent like a hitman and shows up, was like, hey, I'm here to kill you. And I was like, okay, Joe, like, I don't know what you gonna do because you in public, right? So killer hitman guy goes, look, I'm tired of killing people. So why don't you give me the money that was in that Love's account that you emptied out, and then I'll let you go, and then I could go on vacation and do whatever. And he was like, all right. So Joe really thinks that he's on Price is Right or something, trying to make a deal with this guy. And I was like, Joe, you ain't got that many options. Like, what are you gonna do? So then the guy's like, here, this for you. Here's a new ID. Be, Jonathan Moore, because that's Joe's new name. Gets a fake passport, fake IDs, all this stuff. And he's like, stay out of trouble or whatever like that, because I ain't gonna be showing up and giving you no new IDs if you start murking people or whatever like that, right? So anyway, Joe takes it. So that's how we get, Joe with a new ID, whatever. And immediately I'm like, this is a setup, right? I was like, you know what? I don't think Love is dead. This is my theory. I don't think Love is dead. And I think Love and Marianne are working together to like frame Joe, whatever like that, right? Because during the course of like these like next episodes, Joe's getting these text messages and they're playing like cat and mouse and like all this stuff. So we get into this little group of characters, right? So Phoebe has a boyfriend. I think his name is Alan, right? Who's an American. But he's the guy who owns Sundry House, right? So Joe, who does not know how to mind his business, decides that he's going to go and try to play like Agatha Christie, right? And try to figure out who all these people are. Now, another thing, I love Agatha Christie novels. Miss Marple on BritBox on Prime, fantastic. Watch it. So she's telling him like all the different kind of the formulas to murder mysteries, right? It's usually for revenge, money, and sex, and that there's no coincidences, and that the second victim is usually the first suspect, right? So Joe is really trying to figure out like who these suspects are, and while he's like playing like low rent at Miss Marple, right? Come to find out, he's at Sundry House. This guy, Alan's having this meeting. Joe goes and tries to follow him because Joe thinks maybe it's Alan. Child, Alan is down there getting pissed on by one of the bartenders. Now, at first, when he got down on his knees, I was like, oh no. But then he was like, had the goggles on, and I was just like, you know what? That was not on my bingo card for you, right? I was like, that's not on my bingo card. Yeah, and also we're not going to discuss Malcolm's huge penis with his like Prince Albert, because I was like, okay, good, good for Netflix or whatever. So anyway, oh yeah, that scene when Joe was cutting up Malcolm's body to Cardi B, I like it like that, I thought was hilarious because it totally doesn't match tonally, but it gives you the levity and like the normalcy that Joe's has just fallen into when it comes to dismembering people on a Tuesday night, right? Like, it's Tuesday, 6 o'clock, I guess somebody has to get cut up, right? So now, Joe's like, okay, what's going on? Okay, he was like, okay, this is interesting. So while Joe is trying to play like low-key Carmen Sandiego, Butler, bodyguard of Phoebe, catches him, right? So then Joe has to like pretend like he says he's doing research for a book about rich people because he's poor and he's like despises the wealthy, blah, 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 right? Anyway, so that's how he gets the bodyguard kind of person like off his back at this point, right? So in the meantime, he's still like following Kate. Kate has laid him down already in the middle of the fucking university, being like, I don't trust you. I don't trust you ingratiating yourself into my friend group. I think you're a grifter. Now, at this conversation, Joe should have stayed the fuck away from Kate and laid her the fuck out, being like, I don't give a fuck what you like. If Phoebe likes me, then you motherfucker have to like it too, right? So Joe's still going around looking for his like suspects and whatever. Come to find out, his next person is Simon, right? Because Joe has now broken into Malcolm's office looking for clues, right? So he's trying to figure out if Malcolm was killed. His thought is that Malcolm was killed for either revenge, money, or sex, and he's trying to figure out why someone would have killed Malcolm. So he finds this book that has kind of like clues about things that are going on with all these people, because all of these people, all went to school together at Oxford, right? So they're all like kind of that same age range where they all went to school together and they all like go back a long, long ways. So Malcolm had low-key found out about Alan getting pissed on, right? And then he had another entry about Simon. So Simon is having this gallery opening. Phoebe summons him, okay? Phoebe summons Joe to come to his apartment, right? Joe shows up and hears screaming. He decides he's going to run in and grab a sculpture, like he's going to bash their head in. I said, if you don't stay out these grown people's business, Joe, like like the streets are too hot for you to be up in everybody's business, right? So I was just like, Joe, you're going to learn today, one of these days, about staying in people's business. Because, I don't know. Phoebe's like, no, I want you to come to this opening, bop, bop, boop. So then she sends her bodyguard, I'll call him Alfred because I forget what his name was. So she sends Alfred and Joe to go get a suit, go get a Tom Ford suit down at the gallery or whatever like that. So Kate's down at the gallery with Simon and then Simon's sister, and Simon's acting all ridiculous and Kate's all stressed out because she's trying to get this opening done. And then they're like, and so all the other people that are there, there's like Connie, the horse person, and they're just really paying Joe shade. Like they shade Joe every time he shows up because he just looks like a dumpster fire. And I was just like, well, Joe, you didn't dress this badly when you were in New York. Like, I guess he's trying to be in character like a poor professor because Joe didn't look this bad in any other season. So I guess he's figuring, and also he probably don't have no money because I don't know, whatever. So I'm just trying to give him a benefit of the doubt of why he's just dressing so homely. So then when Alfred's like, Phoebe sent him to get a suit, everybody immediately bucks up and gets a formation and fixes her face around Joe. And Joe's like, okay, Phoebe has to wait here. So they get him in this nice little like Tom Ford suit or whatever like that. They go to the opening. So they're at the opening. So then we get Rolled, who we had met earlier at the Sundry House, and he's all buddy with Kate. Oh, I wouldn't miss it, or I just flew in. And he's walking around. Now let's talk about buying some egg that were you for $50,000 and you crack it open to see what it is. And Joe's classist ass is just having a ridiculousness. Oh, by the way, so when Joe shows up to the gallery opening, there's this snoopy little white lady with a camera who is like trying to take Joe's picture, and he's like trying to avoid. So Joe ends up going through the back door with this other woman who helps him go into the gallery because he's trying to avoid having his picture taken or whatever. So he's in the gallery as he's sitting there and he's talking to Kate, and Kate's being the bitch like Kate's always is. Here comes old girl comes in and does a PETA water sport, a red paint splash all over Simon's pictures, right? Gets all over Kate. Everyone's upset. So Simon plays it off and pretends like it was part of the show, right? So now Joe decides, because he wants to ingratiate himself with Kate, being like, I think I know where I can find her. So they go down, see old girl. Old girl's like, all those paintings I did, Simon's a fraud. And Kate's kind of like low-key like, okay. So Kate just writes the girl a check, like, how much do you need? And like, I was like, low-key, like really mean to her. Come to find out, Kate has put this girl in rehab and is like, oh, well, if you need anything, let me know. We'll talk about your career, right? So in the interim of this, they're having Malcolm's funeral because stalking messaging person has now sent Malcolm's finger to the police, right? So now there's this eat the rich killer that's out there and everyone's all kind of freaked out. Now we know Malcolm's been murdered and the little like rich kids are really not acting all that concerned, right? So in the interim of this, the little student chick who Joe's been talking to is giving him the Agatha Christie stuff, right? She's like, she's in fucking Malcolm, and she left a letter at Malcolm's house. So Joe is on his way and sees her trying to like look for the hiding key. And I was like, if that's not the boldest shit I've ever seen. So the side piece, I'm telling you, these side pieces nowadays I don't know who your union president is for the side pieces. I don't know who's in charge, but y'all need to get the side pieces together. How bold is it to be at the house and looking for the hiding key, right? That is literally how you get hit in the head with a hammer, right? Because I was just like, do they not have the side piece manual out anymore? Maybe because it's Britain and it doesn't translate well. Not like the American side pieces behave any better, but I was just like, oh, y'all are just bold out here. Like, okay, whatever. So anyway, they go to the funeral. blah, 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 blah. He's still with Kate. Kate's irking the dog fuck out of me because she just don't know how to be nice, right? She just really can't be nice. But now the killer has told Joe that Kate's the next victim, right? So now he's going to follow Kate all around, right? Trying to protect her. No, Joe, you knew you were trying to protect yourself. So everywhere Kate is, you need to be in a public place with one of your friend circles. So when Kate is murdered, they can be like, I was with them. I don't understand this, right? So again, this is all Joe and his bad decision making, because I was like, if Kate's gonna be a victim, you don't know Kate. Kate don't owe you shit. She ain't paying your bills. She ain't doing shit for you. She's been a bitch the entire time. I'll be at Phoebe's house every fucking day. And when we get the phone call that Kate's been murdered, I'll be like, ooh, girl, I'm so sorry. You can cry. Fuck Kate, right? Like, whatever. So, of course, Joe does the opposite. It's like she's going to follow her. Follow her to this garden, right? And then he decides, like, so he's like, then he decides, like, he's going to, like, have sex with Kate. And I was like, I don't know if that was the best decision, right? So I was like, so we put that in Joe's questionable sex categories. Mind you, he's followed her all the way to this mausoleum where she's talking to Malcolm. And while he's in the mausoleum, Alfred shows up, right? Because people just decide to play Captain Save-A-Ho all the time. So then he goes and he's killed Alfred. And I was like, child, okay. So he kills Alfred, sends a resignation letter to Phoebe from his phone, buries him in the cemetery where they're at. After he's already fucked Kate. He goes back home with Kate. They're like fool-la-lawing around again. And then he decides, because Joe dislikes to be Captain Save-A-Ho, he gonna go look for old girl's letters. And I was like, okay. So he sees this picture, this douchey picture of Malcolm, and there's like a whole stack of letters. And I'm like, so is Malcolm fucking all these people and they're just writing him love letters in 2023? No. I'm like, okay, but whatever, right? So Malcolm takes the love letter, and then Kate comes in and is like, what are you doing here? And he was like, well, and she's like, it's the only reason you had sex with me, and so you can get these letters. And I'm like, bitch, I'm like, Joe, did you not put it down good enough for her? Like her attitude was just as stink as it was before you fucked her. So I don't know if like Joe's stroke game was off or whatever, but I was like, she shouldn't have been this bitchy just after having sex. So anyway, he leaves. So after he leaves, Kate decides she's going to finally pull her blinds. I was like, bitch, you should have long since I've been pulling your blinds. So Joe's all shut out. So then we got two people dead. So now we got Malcolm dead. We got Alfred dead. And now we find out, you go to the thing, Simon's dead, right? Because so Joe fell asleep, waiting for Simon to come out, watching him looking out for Kate while he's doing all this shit, right? After she don't shoot him away, fucking Simon gets killed, right? But luckily, they're like, Joe was outside. He, clearly, anyway, so Simon gets killed. So that's, the whole thing too. So I was just like, you know what, girl? Joe, making these bad decisions. So the worst decision Joe makes is he decides to go to the Hampseys with Phoebe at her big chateau house, right? And I was like, Joe, there is a serial killer trying to frame you that's picking off people in this group. You need to be someplace else where these people are not. So you go into a secluded country house, more than likely it's going to mean that one or more of these people are going to be dead, and your outsider ass is going to be the main topic, right? Child, we get to the house, he gets the Tennyson suite, and all of a sudden, Kate's like, oh my God, somebody must like you. The Tenny suite is only for her favorite people. I would have been like, yeah, bitch, Phoebe fucks with me, and that's why I don't fuck with you. But whatever, since I was like, because they have adjoining rooms, right? So then Joe, when he was packing for shit, decides he's gonna take his serial killer travel kit, right? Which probably makes one of the better decisions, right? Because if one of them is a killer, I don't know if I would have tried the little stringy thing, the little piano wire with the strangle thing. I would have probably used something a little bit more mobile, but I don't think like a serial killer, so obviously there must be a reason why he took it. Child, he gets a letter that says, meet me in the library. Child, it's Phoebe, and Phoebe wants to fuck Joe. So I was like, this is the dick you should be slinging, right? Like, fuck Kate. Like, don't even fuck Kate. You need to be fucking Phoebe, because Phoebe's nice. Phoebe will shower you with presents. She'll take care of you. And if she finds out you're a serial killer, her family will fucking protect you or whatever like this. Like, you could really you could really do a hopscotch come up with Phoebe, because Kate's not whatever. So anyway, he turns Phoebe down, and then he kind of low-key snitches on Alan and breaks bro code about this whole pissing thing. And I was like, dude, like, why would you break bro code to fuck around with Phoebe? But Phoebe got him a Tom Ford suit. Alan didn't get him shit. So you know what? Yahtzee to him, right? So anyway, Alan and Phoebe get together. Phoebe's like, I know you have a fetish. What is it? Is it pegging? And then it's like, no. And then he's like, oh, it's golden showers. And then they get this whole little fight or whatever, domestics or whatever. Anyway, Kate's still being a bitch. They decided, so then Roll shows up, and Joe decides he wants to go snooping around in Roll's room, because that's the best thing for you to do with all the staff, all these people who've known each other. Your outsider ass is going to go in someone else's room who you don't know, and there's no back door because there's no adjoining room for you to potentially be caught. So anyway, he finds out and deduces that Roll's in love with Kate, which is pretty much what we kind of figured out anyway, because he's just always low-key clinging around her, right? So he's like, okay. So they get ready. So they go hunting, right? Because Roll made a comment when he first showed up about, do you go hunt? He's like, not really. And he's like, yeah, didn't you have a vice president who shoots someone, right? At that point, I would have known Roll is not the person for me to be in the woods with a gun, period, right? But no, Joe. Joe's going to go out shooting with him, right? And then is going to turn his back to this guy who has low-key been like giving him the hateful eyes while he's shooting. So then literally Rose decides to turn and look like he's about to shoot Joe in the back. And then here comes Kate, her only redeemable thing, and she stops Rose for probably murdering Joe outside in the woods. And I'm looking at Joe like, what kind of a sloppy, dopey-ass serial killer are you, right? Like, you out here murking people, burning bodies, doing all this shit, but you gonna be in the woods and almost get killed by this fucker? I was like, Joe, you need to tighten your game up. Like, you need to tighten it up really bad. You need to tighten it up. Anyway, we get to the nighttime. They have dinner. So Roll's in his feelings, right? So he decides he exposes Kate. So everybody else comes for money, but it seemed like Kate, didn't really come for money. Come to find out, her dad's a cajillionaire too, and he's like a corporate raider who dismantles companies, and Kate is ethically opposed to this because only rich white people could be ethically opposed to like their parents being billionaires or whatever like that. Whatever, Kate. Don't like her, don't care about your trauma, don't care about your pain. So she goes ahead and she comes to find that's who the security people are, right? Because when we see these security people kind of like meandering around, I thought they were Phoebe's security because Alfred was dead. Nope, that's Kate's father who has sent security to protect Kate because there's this eat the rich killer. So now we get dinner. They're talking. After dinner's over, they play like a murder mystery game and whatever like that, which I kind of like the show kind of not being too meta, but kind of like meta on top of meta, kind of like a murder mystery than a murder mystery. They're all drunk, doing drugs. Child, Joe's about to fuck Kate again. And I'm like, why you back with her? Keep fucking with her. Child, come to find out, Joe leaves. Gemma, who was another rich one, who was despicable because she was the one who says horrible things about black people and Jews all on the internet before noon. So, child, Gemma's dead. Mind you, at this point, Joe has already been pushed out the window by Roll because he got caught in his room again. And Roll was like, they were fighting and tussling and they threw him out the window. So at this point, Joe's thinking that Kate is the person who's been texting him, right? No, child. Now, Kate's been found with a murderer with a knife in her hand, all this stuff. They try to wrap her up. So then they put her in the chest, right? Until everybody can leave. Because all of a sudden, Joe decides he's going to trust Kate, who has literally shown him nothing worth that she's worth being trusted, worth being trustworthy. Child, they put that body in the Kate, and I almost cackled out loud when that dead body fell through that old wooden casket. I was like, Joe, come on. Like, think. So they literally tossed the body out the window, taping to the gaming house so then Joe can get ready to like burn people up or whatever like that. So then it comes out that Jim is dead, and then Roll decides he's gonna be Captain Save-A-Ho, and then he's gonna attack, and he's gonna go and shoot Joe, and they have this big confrontation in the living room, and the rich people are like, we don't know you, so like if he wants to shoot you, too bad for you, right? So anyway, come to find out, this is all going on like our fifth episode. Come to find out that the person who has been texting him is really Reese. And that Reese is the one who's been killing all these people, right? Because Reese has Joe and Roll chained in this like basement or this room that they so eloquently wanted the like labels like where the slaves and the slaves' children were or whatever like that in this basement. I was like, okay. So anyway, then the house catches on fire. I forget how the house caught on fire. Sorry. House catches on fire. So that's how they cover up Jim's act. Joe gets out. Roll gets out. This is what we're, so Joe gets back to London, and now he's looking at the television, thinking and recognizing that Reese is now this guy who's been texting him, right? I don't know if that's the case, right? Because if you watch Murder Mysteries, there's always a lot of misdirection, right? Like, I really don't want it to be Reese. I really want a better twist to this, right? Because it's kind of like, it just gives me that Dexter tease for that season when Dexter had like found another serial killer and him, the serial killer, are at odds and trying to do it. I want this twist to be something a little bit better than it just being Reese and he's a mayor and Joe feels vindicated and Kate is just so bland and boring. I just don't like her as a love interest or whatever like that. So that is what I thought of You. Thank you. So we're gonna watch. So when part 2 comes out, I'll just do another whole spoilery review of when part 2. I'll give you all like maybe a couple of days after it comes out, and then I'll do it too. So I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I am. And this week we're going to do Real Housewives of New Jersey, and look at Sharper on Apple TV. I think I may start to review that too. The first episode comes out February 17th. So I like to wait and watch like the first couple of episodes, kind of the first 3 episodes together, so you can get kind of like a feel of kind of like what the series is about. Because I feel like if I start reviewing a show and then the show's like ends up being shitty, I'm like stuck reviewing the show for another 10 weeks. Ergo, Mayfair Witches, if you've been seeing my reviews of Mayfair Witches, which has just been like literally the Titanic in a gasoline trunk. So anyway, have a great week. Happy Monday. Happy Valentine's Day. Do something love. Be love. Thanks, guys.